Right, thanks everybody for coming. Welcome to Showcase 7. Today we'll be covering 3 streams of work. Lisa will be talking about pod, access process. Anna will briefly speak about future state with Q&A. So I'll hand over to Lisa.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Since we launched the pilot of pod 2 weeks ago, we continue to monitor daily and collect metrics on usage and activity and things like that. We have observed a big uptake in the first week where people were logging in, exploring it a bit, and some were even posting comments. The first impression from the first week was that it was easy to use and good, but they needed to explore it more. Learning a lot about how people would use the tool such as pod in their work and in terms of how often they would use it. What's interesting is that we were seeing differences in how often people said they'd use pod in the interview situation in the prototype testing, which was about once a week, I said, versus what the actual usage in the real world when they have sort of competing demands for their time and competing priorities. The challenge for us is that we'll continue to observe and measure and not to intervene because we need to keep the test consistent over the 4 weeks. We only are halfway through the pilot survey, which went out on Friday. We've asked questions about what are some of the barriers that people have in their world to using pod. And at the end of the pilot, in 2 weeks' time, we'll take these metrics and the feedback that we've gathered and we'll decide whether or not it's worth developing further and investing in. In the meantime, we've picked up a new problem and Wendy will talk about that next.
So while pod is in pilot mode, our team has had the space to pick up the new next biggest problem that was surfaced during our discovery interview phase of interviews. So just by way of a quick recap, back in August, we spoke with over 80 people in their roles. And from this, there emerged 2 particularly big areas: lack of community, connecting people and information. And it led to our development of pod. This theme that emerged from those interviews, which we've now started to look at, was difficulty with our processes around access. Exciting, getting the opportunity in our agile way of working to this new problem. Those tools and methods that we've been learning, like the ability to iterate quickly based on customer feedback. Able to hit the ground running with this new problem area. There's already a lot of information we've captured from the interviews we've done so far that we can now reuse. And it's also helped us to be able to quickly identify people for whom there's value going and speaking to them again to find out more about this particular area. Hearing things like the process, it took a bit longer than I was expecting. This doesn't really support project iteration or the application process. The status of my project application isn't very visible. So we've got some areas to start thinking about. The processes, as a word or a term, is a broad one. There are processes involved in getting access in the first place, and processes around how to use data, and also processes around how output can be shared at the end. So we've chosen to start with the processes for getting access to data, and we want to find out what is the piece of the process that, if we're able to fix it or do it differently, would have the most impact for our customers. So we will be spending the next week or so going out and speaking to about a dozen customers who've gone through the application process, some of them repeatedly, others who are first timers, and we want to learn more about their experiences. So we're going to try and scope out the size of the problem and identify what changes would make most differences. And to do that, we'll be measuring their perceptions of the current process, asking them to prioritize the problem areas, listening to their suggested improvements, and measuring what impact these changes will have on their usage and their satisfaction levels to make some changes. And then we can start prototyping some solutions. And our goal is to be in a position where we can start to make some real changes with real customers within the next few weeks. And with that, I'll hand over to Anna, who will talk about another stream of work which has just started up on future state of IDI.
Thank you, Wendy. So as the team sort of alluded to, we have on Thursday last week, we've got a new work stream going with a new team of 4 people who are looking at sort of what we're loosely calling the future state. But the outcome we're driving towards in that initial piece of work is what is the direction that integrated data needs to travel in. And we don't want to go out and do a lot of work on a design and changing infrastructure and making some really big decisions up front until we're really clear on what the needs that people have with now and what they can see coming in the future. So we're really excited to have that started up. You will see the team in the next showcase once they've had a fortnight to dig into things, and we'll be working in the same way. So getting out and talking to people and really understanding the experiences for our customers, people using the data, people supplying data to us, and also people producing our integrated data here at Stats.
Right, so we're now at the point where we're happy to answer any questions you guys might have. Is there anything on the feed, Tim?
No, there isn't.
Just a quick one for me, trying to start. So when you talk about the picking up a second problem, talking to customers again and actually asking them about their ideas for improvements, so that's a little bit different than the previous iterations where it's focused on problems. So can you tell a little bit more about the thinking behind that?
So I think we're definitely still going out and wanting to understand more of the experience. I think some of the difference here is last time we were talking to people and we were like, tell us about your experience with accessing data, tell us what's difficult. And this time we get to go back and say, okay, so we've heard this about the specific aspect of it. Can you tell us a bit more about some of the pitfalls that you've had along the way? And some of them will have ideas, but we're still wanting to hear about what the problems have been and things like that. So but the really nice thing is you're not going back again going and tell us all about this. We're saying, this is what we've heard. Now what we want to do is dig into that a bit more.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm on the state team as well. One of the other things we're looking at is not so much looking at what are your problems with the current IDI infrastructure, but more looking forward to what do you do at time? What wishes that are going to be on you? What are the sorts of people that we think will be using the IDI in 5 years' time? And having those conversations. Little same different. Yeah.
Are you going even bigger than that? Like what is
We're writing the list of who we're talking to as we speak.
I don't think you need to go bigger than customers.
Yeah.
You need to go
Absolutely.
Paul?
Yeah, my questions are on that line too, about what you mean by customers. Do you mean people who actually use the IDI, make use of data from the IDI?
Yeah, so we're still defining some of that because when we've started discussing some of that because the people who make use of the data, the roads do tend to go back quite quickly to the trouble getting the information out of the IDI as well, or out of integrated data products. So we're still working through what the split needs to be
I'm
there.
working with Maori, and they don't necessarily want to access the IDI, but they'd like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and it's not just about the future state of the IDI, it's the future state of integrated data. Yeah.
How are the people you're talking to feeling about back to them? Because I guess you're going to talk to the same people for lots of different things.
We did a couple of times, and went pain point, and are you willing to talk with us? He was open. Happy to come back.
So I think that's it.
Yeah.
We're very conscious of going back, but the thing is you're not going back and saying, I just want to hear all about that. Hey, you told us about this.
Meaning, are you expecting to have automated systems resources that are and confidentialise it and provide it to non-research customers. And it narrowed down to we're just going to talk to researchers or just to talk to
Yeah, so the what the sort of can't build everything that everyone would want, but at least you know what, and you can work back from there and build as you go. Yeah.
Any questions from Christchurch? Or? No?
No.
Good. Oh, okay.
If pod turns out to not, I guess, work how you guys would want
I think you're probably about 2 weeks early for us on that
Okay,
question,
right.
Kate, to be really honest. Yeah, I would hate to predict what we're going to do. We have to let this play out. And as Lisa said, one of the hardest things for us, and one that we're not used to as an organisation, is letting something flow and, you know, not popping in and saying, oh, what is it that's not quite right for you here, and things like that. So so that part of the process has been pretty tough for the team, because you put all this effort into something and then you're kind of unleashing it a wee bit.
I guess I'm just curious about the process in general. Like,
Yeah,
if you do something and it's not working out, do you then keep working on the same problem, or do you eventually get to the point where you just like, we'll do something else?
yeah, so we've already started another problem, but I guess, is that concept for how you would solve the initial problem the right one? That's what we'll come up to. And if it's not, you'd look at something else. Yeah.
And your investment hasn't been great. It's been 4 people for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Rather than lots of
And you've learned a lot along the way. So, you know, so there'll be options. Yeah.
So at the end of 4 weeks, how are you going to measure success, or like, do you have a hypothesis that you're testing? And if so, what is it? How are you going to measure it?
There's a whole bunch of metrics that the guys are counting on a daily and weekly basis. So yeah, they've gone in with some pretty clear goals for what they're looking at. Yeah.
Looking at the access problems, obviously my area of interest. You're looking at customer pain points. Are you looking at pain points from, like, is it hard for you, John, to look at it from the customer pain point as well as not kind of, God, I'd love it if we could fix that bit as well, because you've sort of dealt with the team side of things.
True, but I mean, the process we're using is to step back from that and really discover what, from their perspectives, are the issues, not to offer any solutions, but to really discover what the problem is and what the impact is on their work. We're also talking to suppliers as well. So some of the people involved with the access process who supply data and review applications. So we've got an internal, you know, somebody internally is going to help us with that, as well as external people.
Yeah, I mean, all of these guys have had some input in different ways on facilitating the process. And honestly, like, I can see them going, so good that we're tackling this from the customer perspective and trying to work on it. Yeah.
Getting back to customers, are you also looking to internal customers, or particularly those customers who want to have official statistics to use?
Yes. Easiest question today. Yes, absolutely.
Right. Anything else? Good.
Thanks very
Thanks
much,
very much,
everybody.
Simon. Appreciate
Yeah, we
it.
appreciate coming on.